So last but not least, we have a couple of amazing young entrepreneurs to finish off this amazing day, this amazing Monaco day in Davos, with the two protagonists, Cameron, Fink and Ned who are going to talk about Aru. Aru is an AI company of a unicorn level, building large-scale multi-agent simulation to predict human nature, behavior and decision-making. And we're very lucky to have them today talk to us about their company and their what they want to do with this in the future, in the new developments. So please welcome Ned and Cameron. I think they're here. They're ready, and off they come. Please.
Thanks so much, Justin. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Please, take a seat. So, first question that people are wondering in the audience. How did you and Ned meet, and what was the original insight or challenge that compelled you to start Aru?
Yeah, so Ned and I actually met first day, first class, freshman year of high school. So to put this into context, I'm 20. Ned is recently 21. So
3 days ago.
I can't legally drink in the city I live. He is yet to legally drink in the city he lives in. But we met first day, first class, freshman year of high school. We grew up together on the Chicago suburbs. And I remember ever since then, we've been tinkering with computers. And we were the kids who used to DDoS our school so that we could avoid turning in our homework on time. And ever since then, have been building businesses and startups together.
Yeah, so COVID was our freshman year of high school, which might be a bit of a weird reality check. But we got to spend that full time screwing around with computers, ended up building a couple of companies and having a successful exit while we were in high school, and then eventually started the company. As far as like the actual insight, what do we solve for, right? We simulate behavior. Predicting what people will do is every single person who's in this room's industry, right? Whether you cut hair, or you sell products, or you make credit cards, or whatever it may be, right? Or you bank people, whatever the scenario is, you sell boats, right? You're trying to understand what people will do, right? And fundamentally, people are incredibly bad at representing their actual behavior. Look at polling. Look at elections in 24. Look at the fact that less than 30% of products that are launched by the biggest consumer companies in the world actually succeed. It's not because they don't ask people. It's because people lie. And there's not a single person in this room who, not to say that we would in the first place, have the time to actually respond to research, right? And so the behavior that we actually get to measure traditionally is incredibly non-representative of what people actually do. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, please, can you let the audience know how AI simulation actually works and what makes your approach with Aru distinct from traditional models?
100%. So multi-agent simulation, a whole bunch of technical gobbledygook. What it effectively means is you have a bunch of data about a population, right? So think of things like age, race, gender, sex, sexual preference, things like that, about who makes up this population. And then you're able to assign it to an AI model, right? So think of something like GPT, Gemini. Unfortunately for our compute bills, we can't use those guys. We have to build our own models. But when you combine this slew of data with a model and then you give it a task to complete, like respond to a question, feedback on a survey, price, product, whatever it may be, it becomes what we refer to as an AI agent or a synthetic respondent. And so when we talk about this idea of multi-agent interface, it's the idea of organizing thousands of those synthetic respondents in parallel and using them to simulate populations and their behavior at scale. Yeah.
And when you think about what makes us different from all of the other ways that people have tried to predict human behavior before, everything like to this day, to the day we founded our company on March 28, 2024, revolved around this idea of like, I'm going to go talk to humans. I'll survey them. I'll poll them. I'll conduct research on them. And that's going to be my indicator. But we know that's wrong, right? Political polling is less accurate than it's ever been before. The failure rate of consumer products is actually going up over time. And so clearly we have a problem with this traditional research. And so rather than ever trusting humans to faithfully represent their behavior, we measure their behavior directly. We go to the source. And that's what Ned is saying when we're talking about credit card purchase history, life insurance data.
We won't look at polls, right? We'll look at vote counts. We won't look at surveys. We'll look at click-through rates, right? So it's observed behavior rather than what you and I actually say we do, right? Like think about it this way. Unfortunately, my Instagram is not representative of who I am as a person in entirety. And so what we'll do instead is look at what actually makes up a certain individual rather than asking them. Yeah.
You've recently become the youngest unicorn founders in history. Yeah. I mean, I want to congratulate you on that incredible feat. Could you share with the audience a few examples of how Aru have been deployed so far and what kinds of insights or outcomes those projects have delivered?
So one of my favorite projects I've ever done was for a consumer company. When they came to us and they said, we have a very, very distinct problem that's almost impossible to solve. One of the largest beverages companies in the world was having significantly lower attachment rates when ordering through fast food chains via delivery apps than when you go in person. So you can think about this as like way fewer people order combos from Burger King via DoorDash than when they actually go to Burger King in person. And this sounds like a really minute problem, but as you think about it, these are actually some of the biggest sections of these restaurants' businesses. And so for business like this, especially as delivery app volume goes up, this is a $1 billion problem, right? It could easily be a $1 billion problem. And they'd spent millions of dollars on traditional research, on Bain, BCG, in order to try and solve it, and they hadn't. And so they came to us, and what we did is we actually simulated not only the consumers, right? So not only who's actually purchasing the beverage, but the delivery drivers and the store managers and employees as well. And what we watched was very simple. It wasn't an issue on the consumer side. It was an issue, and this is like unbelievable, that when store employees were handing over the beverages to the drivers who would take them to the consumers, they didn't attach the lid well enough. And that alone was enough for those beverages to spill, the DoorDash drivers to complain, and thus the store employees would remove the combos from the available order options, simply so that they would decrease the number of people who would spill a beverage. We helped them solve that issue. It's one of my favorite case studies we've ever done.
Yeah, it's a very minute thing, but it costs that business hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I think, in my opinion, some of the most interesting use cases, right? If you model behavior, you can touch any industry. We work with some companies in over 100 countries. We work for about a dozen countries, right? We use stuff to set things like package design. We also use our systems to set policy, right? Like we work with some governments, if they're releasing a very controversial budget, we'll simulate their citizens and see how people react, right? We'll use our systems to simulate protesters and see what will get them to stop, right? All sorts of really, really fascinating things on a macro scale, much more than just consumer behavior.
Incredible. Well, just on that question, you both work with public and private sector organizations and entities. How do you engage with them? I imagine the approach is different.
Well, when you think about it, right, the way that we started this company is off the baseline thesis that no behavior can be modeled in a vacuum. What does that mean? One of the most indicative numbers that was, would tell you who you voted for in 2024 wasn't your race, it wasn't your gender, it wasn't who you voted for before in America, because there were plenty of people who went Obama, Clinton, Biden, Trump, right? It was the price of eggs in your local grocery store.
Exactly.
That's a heck of a lot closer to something we'd sell, Coca-Cola and price elasticity. But the truth is, the way you buy products affects the way you vote. The way you vote affects the way you buy products, so on and so forth. And so we went to build our system. We didn't build it for consumer behavior. We didn't build it for defense. We didn't build it for politics. We built it for behavior overall. And as a result, anybody who goes and tries to build a model just for consumer and trains off consumer behavior, we'll beat them in accuracy because we do politics. And anyone who tries to build our models for similar stuff for politics, will beat them in politics because we do consumer, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, you're solving the same problems.
It's intertwined.
It's making better decisions. Absolutely, and everybody has to do that, right? The way that somebody, we might sell a politician something where they're really looking to win a controversial race, right? And they're trying to understand what sorts of advertising will get some, low-income population to go out and vote for them. It's a very, very interesting use case, very compelling, obviously very impactful. We're running an almost identical simulation for a movie theater company or a movie production company and testing their trailers, right? At the end of the day, drastically different use cases, but it's almost the same questions being asked to very similar populations at times. So, from an approach basis, people have sold snake oil in predictive technology since they were literally selling snake oil, right? And so we chose elections very early on to prove our systems out because you can't lie. You can say, this is what we predicted on this certain day. This is what actually happened, and this is what all the incumbents and pollsters said, right? Nielsen isn't going out there with McDonald's and saying, look how good we thought the product was going to sell, and it failed, right? That's not public, but pollsters don't have a choice. And so we chose elections very early on to say, here it is, this is what we do, black and white, our systems are accurate.
As time is short, let's keep going. Let's talk also about performance and trust. When a client does adopt, Aru? How do they measure your efficiency, really? How do your models evolve over time as they also ingest much more data?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, one of the very first things we do with every single client is we set the baseline at, we don't expect you to trust us. I mean, when I'm coming out and I'm saying like, hey, we can predict human behavior for any situation in the world, you probably shouldn't trust us. And so that's when we start and we say, okay, give us something you know that we don't.
Yes.
And we'll prove to you that we can predict it. We'll show you just how accurate this technology can be. And we've done that with every single client, and every single time they're blown away by just how accurate it is. I mean, to put it into context, right? Like everyone here probably was watching the New York City mayoral election. This is a great demonstration of accuracy.
Very intense.
A very intense election. About 1.1 million voters in the entire election. We were about 10,000 votes off by total variation distance, right? So as you ask what total variation distance means, that means maybe you're 3,000 off on one candidate, 4,000 off on another, and 3,000 on the final one. So in reality, you're maybe closer to like actually 3,500 people wrong,
yes.
right? 3,500 votes wrong because we predicted the vote share for each candidate individually. To say that we are 3,500 people wrong in the city of New York, where there are, if I recall, 2,600 voting precincts,
Yep.
means that you got roughly one person wrong per precinct. To put that into context, our accuracy is so high that when you went to vote, if you live in New York City, when you went to vote, every single person in that room, we predicted their vote correctly. Not only that, if you were a poll worker, in fact, you spent 4 days early voting and on-day voting, processing ballots, signing every single one, welcoming people into the station, it's likely that every single ballot you processed, we predicted correctly. That is just mind-blowing to think about the scale of how accurate this technology can be.
So is Trump going to win the next midterms? No, that's not the question of today. But no, we have very little time, and I'd like the audience to perhaps ask you a question or two. So just a quick question on your broader vision for Aru in the next 5 to 10 years. What would you like to see?
Yeah. I think the way that we started this business, right, is of course making better decisions is an incredibly compelling thing and is very commercially impactful, right? We've been a profitable business since practically when we started. But it goes much, much beyond that, right? Cam and I had started a few companies in high school. We had kind of recognized that, monetary motivation only goes so far when building a very difficult problem. To put it in simplest terms, and you guys are all going to think we're total nut jobs if you don't already, we believe that if you can predict behavior, you can predict the future. You might have 300 million people in an election in the US. And if you predict that election correctly, that's great, right? It's 300 million people, but it's really 1 degree of behavior, right? They've all made one decision. They went to the polls, they all voted. Okay, predict an election, who's going to protest? 2 degrees. Who's going to protest? How does this affect supply chain in Milwaukee? 3 degrees. How does it going to affect teachers' unions in Ohio? 4 degrees, so on and so forth. The theory being that if you can model behavior on a first-degree basis, right, what will I do in this certain action? What will this population do in a certain action? On a wide enough scale, then you can get to that second degree. And if you can get to that second degree on a wide enough scale, you can get to that third, and so on and so forth, until you can literally predict what will happen tomorrow. That is our goal as a business, putting a crystal ball on an OLED laptop screen. That is pretty much where we want to take this company. And today, we get to do some very, very impactful work out of it. Absolutely.
Cameron, would you like to add something to that? Or?
I agree entirely with what Ned says. It's a very simple calculation. If you believe humans are the most important species on the planet, which is something I doubt anyone here would dispute, humans, we warm the globe, we shape the globe, someday we may leave the globe, and that'll be a human decision that we make, probably one we'll predict. Then if humans are the most important species on the globe, then predicting human behavior is equivalent to predicting the future, as Ned said. And if you can predict the future, you can shape it.
Well, thank you so much for your insights and expertise and your dynamism. It was fantastic to interview you. Perhaps we'll have one question as we have 2 minutes left from the audience. Is there a mic anywhere, please? Or do you have a...
They just shout it up, maybe, I'm not sure.
I have a strong voice.
I need to do something.
Yeah. Tassos needs to be occupied, otherwise...
Incredible. Anyway, the 2 guys are absolutely incredible. But just like sitting here and the shaping of the future was the bit that just stood out for me, right? Okay, because obviously the power that has, it's almost like Cambridge Analytica on steroids. And I'm sure people have said that to you before, right? So the power in your hands, who do you sell it to then?
Yeah, no, it's very important
and
thing.
just your own, who's regulating that, or like your own decision, you want to go one direction, you go, okay, well, this is what we can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, what's your own thoughts about it, like as, you know, as leaders, you know, in your own company?
Sure, I think I certainly have a quick answer to this, and I'm sure we'll have a collaboratively longer one. First off, it's very important, right? We have very, very strict guidelines about this. We're not a partisan business, even though politics, as we talked about, is a tangible example. It's a very minor fraction of our business. We're a nonpartisan organization. We never work with people who promote violence in any way, right? We work with America and American-aligned partners globally, right?
And what if they're not aligned with America?
We don't work with them. It's, you know, for us, it's very simple who we choose to work with. We don't work with people who directly go against America, and we don't work with people who promote, cause, or inflict violence themselves.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? I'll be honest. Us having a strict ethics policy does like limit the amount of available clients.
Cameron, can I just make the point? So inside America, as we see it now, right from the outside, is it's completely split in the middle. So which part of America are you with? Which side? Because it's completely like, as from an outsider looking in, right now the US seems to be split in the middle. Like, which side do you choose?
I will expand what I say about America to mean we do not work with people who directly go against the interests of like the broader liberal majority on the globe. So when I say that, I mean we don't work with North Korea, we don't work with Iran, we don't work with Russian businesses today, and we're very careful about which businesses we would work with. In fact, as of today, we don't even work with any Chinese businesses. So we're very, very careful in that respect. The goal is to exclude more than you include.
I would also add on behalf of that, right? Having the power to shape behavior and the world being as polarized as it is something that we aim to change. If you can shape behavior at scale, sure, there are negative impacts, but we're very careful about that. We want to make the world a less hateful place. I would love if we could simulate populations and figure out what would make them more pro-nuclear. These are projects we work on today, because I believe that will massively benefit the environment, right? Our moral imperative to build is partially, as building this business, is that we become the first people who are in charge of this technology, rather than some Pyongyang-based company doing it to us first, right? And you're right, it is incredibly powerful. Any powerful technology can be scary, right? And this is why we have very, very strict ethical rules internally. It's important to us, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Cameron and Ned. Who'll be staying with us anyway for the cocktails, so you'll be able to ask them questions directly afterwards. But we need to conclude this fantastic day, and I'll just thank you again for your
really
insights.
No,
thank you very much for
expertise. Thank you guys.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
And then
Cameron,
a quick picture, and then we'll have the closing remarks from Ludmilla.